All right, so let's have a look at the indoor compost at week 2. Between week 1 and week 2, I did not add anything into the compost and I actually hardly stirred it, so I just wanted to let it sit and do its thing. And this week, it's worth noting that this particular week was quite warm and quite humid, and I noticed that I could visibly tell that things were breaking down pretty fast. And of course, this was summer in New York City, so temperature and humidity were both pretty high. And because week 2 is it's still pretty early for this system, you can really still kind of make out the cocoa core and the biochar material bedding. That I had originally put into the bin, and as we sort of progress into the next view in month 2, you'll see that that's no longer the case. But at this point, the food scraps are still just sort of softening and beginning to break down. But soften it did, and so here I'm poking around at some of the pineapple peels that I put in there, and a quick sort of gentle little stab, and they break. So that certainly is progress, and I'm excited to show you month 2. All right, so let's have a look at month 2 of the indoor compost. As I start digging around, you're gonna see that this material is a lot more loose. There's just so much more material that's broken down in here than week 2, of course, including 20 pounds or more of food scraps. And as I share with you what's sort of included in the 20 pounds, I also want to share with you some of the things that I learned don't break down well in this particular system. And that includes scattered all over, and you can see it, eggshells, and those are sort of just sitting in there and not doing a whole lot, as well as tea bags. Though the tea leaves inside the bags do break down, the bag itself does not break down. As I had mentioned before, temperature and humidity certainly matter, and that's especially true sort of having witnessed this process for 2 months. And it's good to know, I think, in terms of just knowing the seasons in the city where you live, and especially in New York City, knowing that in the summertime the process might be a lot quicker than during colder or drier seasons. Good news is there still is no odor coming out of the system. There are just organic scents, and those smells sort of do evolve when the system is in like hyper decomposition mode. It could smell a little bit moldy, but then it sort of, once it breaks down, reverts back to just organic, sort of earthy scent. And none of this I even smell unless I sort of uncover the T-shirt that I used to cover the system, and I like intentionally take a whiff. Something that's new is the a discovery of a lot of springtails in the system, and the springtails is just this sort of really itty bitty tiny little bug whose job is to break down organic material. So I'm not worried at all about having them in the system. They just they're so tiny. They stay in there and they don't do a whole lot. But I can see how that might be uncomfortable for some people. And then finally, I haven't added any additional bedding to the system. So what you're looking at is just the original cocoa core and biochar that I put in there, plus all the food scraps that have decomposed. So the next thing I want to experiment with is just adding back in, again, the 2-part cocoa core, 1-part biochar, adding some more bedding back into the system to see if any kind of rebalancing actually happens. And if there is a rebalancing, does that impact the speed at which decomposition happen? These are questions I don't have answers to yet, but hope to soon, so stay tuned.